Again, the breaking news, O.J. Simpson, football star, fall from grace to disgrace, leaves quite a legacy. Parker Collins is here to kind of break down the timeline. Good morning.
Good morning. So as you're kind of getting at, O.J. Simpson made a name for himself first as a football legend, both in college and professional. But then, of course, his court proceedings took over the headlines pretty quickly. The former football great, he was accused of and ultimately acquitted of the brutal 1994 slayings of his ex-wife and her friend. But then just days after the killings, millions watched as Simpson's white Ford Bronco led police on a televised chase through L.A. that lasted close to 2 hours. More than a decade after all of this, Simpson was arrested in 2007 after he led a group of men into a Las Vegas hotel and casino to steal, at gunpoint, what he claims was his own sports memorabilia. Simpson was charged with a number of felony counts, including kidnapping and armed robbery. The following year, he was found guilty and sentenced for several decades in prison. Simpson was released on parole, though. That was in 2017. And then we start to hear about his health. In May of 2023, Simpson posted a video on X revealing he had recently caught cancer and had to do the whole chemo thing. So it sounded like he was really fighting, trying to survive. And then in February of 2024, a TV station in Las Vegas reported that Simpson was again undergoing treatment, possibly chemotherapy, for cancer. Simpson has denied he was in hospice care for this, and really based on his social media presence, it gave the appearance that he was doing what he could to heal and to recover and to get better. The post that really touched all this off this morning was from his family, saying that he was surrounded by his grandchildren and his children, but that he did end up succumbing to cancer.
And they also asked for, privacy and respect, which, as Alex Cohen has been watching social media, does not seem to be happening. This is a complex legacy. We're joined now by Kelvin Washington, who covered this trial and knows intimately the sports angle as well of this man's great legacy. Good morning, Kelvin. Put into context the death of O.J. Simpson and his complex legacy.
Good morning, Giselle. Good morning, guys. You used the proper term there, I think, complexity. Giselle, I've talked to you many times about Ezra Edelman's O.J. Made in America documentary, which was nominated for an Oscar back in 2016, I believe. The reason why I'm fascinated by that film is because it really dives into the complex issues of not only O.J., but really America, which is what made this particular case, that trial, so interesting. You're talking about everything that makes America go, right? The good, the bad, the ugly. You're talking about race. You're talking about celebriton. You're talking about money. You're talking about athleticism and him being a star athlete. You're talking about our legal system. You're talking about what predated O.J.'s trial in the L.A. riots and what role that played in his trial. And so this was something that was obviously divided the country when he was found acquitted. You had a lot of I'll just call it what it is. A lot of Black Americans were excited about that because it wasn't O.J. Simpson per se. It was what a lot of folks had gone through in this country. And then you had a lot of folks who were saying, hey, didn't you see the evidence? It's clearly he's guilty. And they were upset. This was just an interesting, again, a period in America where we were. If you talk about the lack of social media. So this trial consumed everyone, right? This trial had everyone watching. This trial just consumed the entire country for a matter of during the Bronco chase all the way until the verdict. So, and then even past that, what his life has been the last 25 plus years or what have you. So this is something that has forever really divided the country, divided friendships, divided newsrooms, how it was covered. It made celebrities of the prosecutors, celebrities of the defense team, celebrity of the judges, celebrities of everyone involved, even just witnesses, Cato Kalin, for instance. So this is something that really, in my opinion, has been the epitome, the height of America and kind of what this country is about.
I think you really touched on something that, we all have been talking about, where the defense really tried to capitalize on the anger of the Black community and believed, that this was their way to have, somehow payback for the injustices done to so many for so many decades. Talk to us about that, because we have discussed this, you and I, for a long time. This was payback. This had nothing to do with O.J. Simpson, or it did because of his celebrity.
I want to be careful. I wouldn't say it had nothing to do with O.J. or that it was simply payback. I do want to make sure that we iterate a lot of faux pas, if you will, on the prosecution side. I mean, there were a lot of things that would give enough doubt to someone, to your point, who had already gone through and experienced things with the LAPD, who had already had family members who had been maybe railroaded by the LAPD, who had already had family members who had been beaten by the LAPD, who had maybe just been an American citizen and saw Rodney King beaten on camera. And then you say, oh, this is the moment. This is the time that we can say we've been telling you for years this has been happening. You go back to the 1960s with the Watts riots here in L.A. I mean, this is what black folks, even brown folks, have been screaming and crying for years. Hey, we have been abused. We have been taken advantage of. And finally, this was a moment to say, you know, hey, had justice been served? And it was the burden of the prosecution to convince I believe, don't quote me, I believe a majority black jury that, hey, they're saying this is a possibility. I personally, or a friend or a family member, had gone through these types of things with the LAPD before. That is not far-fetched that these things could be, you know, something could have been, you know, wrong. You start to mix in Mark Furman. We know what happened there with the tapes and what he said about his time being on the LAPD and how they would beat the black person's assailants or folks on the street. So this is, again, it made it for just a mixture of emotions, history, and it became very volatile. And so it was, again, this is why it was a very figuratively and literally explosive time in Los Angeles. Again, going back to the LA riots, going back to Latasha Harlins, who was killed by a Korean liquor store worker, and nothing happened to her. So this was just a very, very unique time in LA's history as well as America.
You know, it's interesting. Alex Cohen and I were talking about, it's been almost 30 years, almost to the month, and how much things are still of media, of race and justice, are still at the forefront of American dialogue, no?
And cancel culture. I mean, Kelvin, you've talked so beautifully about what was happening in that moment in the mid-90s. I'd love to ask your thoughts on what happened in O.J.'s later years, those falls from grace, that book that he wrote, If I Did It, and what happened with that. How do you think that's informing the cancel culture that we're seeing so frequently in our society today?
You know what's interesting, Alex? We're in a unique time. I'll take off OJ for a minute, and I'll just give you life in general. I'll give you other people. I'll give you Mike Tyson, right? Mike Tyson's the baddest man on the planet, champion, I think at the time, the youngest heavyweight champion of the world. He's living the best life. He's worth a couple $100 million. Then we know he is convicted. He goes to jail. He comes out. He has a few fights. And then all of a sudden, he's just going crazy. He's biting ears of Vander Holyfield, and he's, I'll eat your babies. And I said that to say there was a moment when Mike Tyson, you would have thought was the most vilified man on earth. Then he comes back. Then he gets into the movie The Hangover. And then he has this kind of resurgence. He has a podcast. He becomes very enlightened. You can see the fall from grace for people, and then there's a resurgence. O.J. Simpson's one of the few people that no way was he going to be allowed to have that full return, right? That full return back to grace. He began to do things that were strange in the early 2000s. He had a reality show that was out there. He was doing really goofy things. He tried to ingratiate himself with the black community again, because in his mind and others, is that, you know, that's who held me down during that time. And then he was trying to find his, you know, way financially, because we know he was owing the Goldstein families for the civil suit. And so he was trying to find ways to make money there. And that's how he got caught up. And, you know, people were using his memorabilia. He was trying to get that back. So it got really strange for him the last 20 years or so. But I'll end it with this. What is interesting, though, is at a certain point, there is It Is What It Is podcast with rappers Cameron and Mace. And they brought him back about 1.5 years, 2 years ago on their podcast, which is a very, very popular podcast / YouTube Ustream. And I mean, very popular. They've made themselves millions of dollars. They got big deals. And he would come on every Monday, or believe it, after, you know, all the Sunday football games. So he was trying to come back in pop culture through them, and it was working, and they were having him on, and he was giving insight and giving his thoughts on the games and thoughts on pop culture. And it was kind of, I'm not going to lie, it was strange to see OJ just kind of having fun, and they were calling him Unc, and they were calling him Juice, and it was really strange to see.
Yeah.
And he was kind of, you know, but
that's
given a
part
second
of
chance, if you will.
part of the celebrity culture we experience today and its impact that media has on these kinds of cases and legacies. Calvin, we'll be coming back to you, and we'll all stay here to continue to examine the life and legacy of O.J. Simpson. We'll be right back.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. For more stories in your communities, click the subscribe button right here. You can also download our app or watch us on TV for the latest news and weather updates every 10 minutes and more. We'll see you then.